Do you trust the American government? Yes or no? Why or why not? Well, I don't personally trust the government. Why don't I trust the government? One of the biggest examples of mistrust, betrayal, misguidance in America's history, actually in the government's history, is the World Trade Center attacks on September 11th, 2001. From the moment the first airplane crashed into the World Trade Center on the morning of September 11th, 2001, the world has asked one simple and compelling question. How could it happen? 3.5 years later, not everyone is convinced we know the truth. Go to google.com, type in the search phrase World Trade Center conspiracy, and you'll get links to an estimated 628,000 websites. More than 3,000 books on 9/11 have been published. In fact, I typed in 9/11, didn't even finish my sentence, phrase on Google, and conspiracy was the first thing that came up. Many of the books and websites reject the official consensus that hijackers associated with Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda flew passenger planes into U.S. landmarks. Nonetheless, conspiracy theorists seize on a handful of facts to argue a very different scenario. The jets that struck New York and Washington, D.C. weren't commercial planes, they say, but something else. Perhaps refueling tankers or guided missiles. And the lack of military intervention, theorists claim it proves that the U.S. government instigated the assault or allowed it to occur in order to advance oil interests and war agenda. The collapse of both World Trade Center towers and the smaller one that hit the Pentagon later initially surprised a lot of experts. But subsequent studies have shown that the WTC, the flight that hit the Pentagon, the structural integrity was destroyed by intense fire, as well as the severe damage inflicted by the planes. That explanation hasn't swayed conspiracy theorists who contend that all three buildings were wired with explosives in advance and raised in a series of controlled demolitions. Whoa, that's really crazy to think that our government could potentially plant bombs in, the World Trade Center. Why would they try to kill their own people? No one understands that, right? I mean, why would they try to kill their own people? When the Pentagon was hit, tapes from public cameras around the area, with public buildings nearby that were next to the Pentagon, around the Pentagon, those tapes were taken away. What happened to those tapes? Why would the government want to hide those tapes? Was it because they were hiding the truth? You know how people called from the planes and they were like, oh my God, I don't even want to go through that. That's so emotional for them. It's sad. But could you even believe that they could potentially be faked? And you're thinking, how can you fake phone calls? Oh, come on. Technology is insane these days. They can do anything. It says, some conspiracists say that the phone calls and cell phone calls were placed from the hijacked planes. Conspiracy theorists believe that cell phone calls should either be impossible or rarely possible from commercial planes, and therefore the hijackings were staged and the phone calls were faked. After 9/11, cellular experts said they were surprised calls were able to be placed from the hijacked planes and that they lasted as long as they did. It just sounded impossible. They said the only reason that the calls went through in the first place is that the aircraft was flying so close to the ground. It has been claimed that action or inaction by U.S. officials with foreknowledge was intended to ensure that the attacks took place successfully, meaning the government knew about it ahead of time, which has been proven to be true today. For example, Michael Meacher, I guess is his name. He is the former British Environment Minister and member of Tony Blair's cabinet until June 2003. He was widely criticized for claiming that America knowingly failed to prevent the attacks. Here's how much the government really cares about protecting its people. President Bush, he had a nice morning on September 11th. He was in Florida. He was reading The Pet Goat to children at Emma E. Booker Elementary School. On the morning of September 11th, he was already aware of the first plane impact before he entered the school. believing it was a horrible accident. And he was sitting in a classroom reading this pet goat book, and at 9:05 a.m., the White House Chief of Staff, Andrew Card, whispered in his ear and said, "A second plane hit the second tower. America is under attack." And instead of taking him to a really safe place or escorting him out of the building saying, "It's an emergency, we have to leave," I'm sure they would understand America's under attack. We should probably get the president out of our elementary school. Well, he chose to stay in the elementary school for an additional 7 minutes or so, without asking for additional information about the flight and the bombings and whatever the attack. And he didn't ask about it, nor did anyone volunteer any additional information. And this has led to allegations that he knew the attack was taking place and that he knew he wasn't a target, because he wasn't a target. The World Trade Centers were a target, and the Pentagon. Response is that Bush's intention was to project strength and calm, i.e. he didn't want to cause more panic by fleeing the room, as the footage would likely have been replayed over and over on news coverage. Oh, dear God. Oh, we've already seen your face all over the internet. God forbid it goes on the news, because I'm sure people would be happier to see you freaking out about an attack in America than just sitting there reading a book to elementary schoolers. Paul Griffin is someone that wrote a book on the 9/11 conspiracies called 9/11, The Myth and the Reality. And he states that achieving this goal, American global hegemony, it's called? Can't say that word, I'm sorry. It required 4 things. This was basically America's goal. They would get control of the world's oil, especially in Central Asia and the Middle East, i.e. Iraq. And the Bush-Cheney administration came to power with plans already made to attack Afghanistan and Iraq. They already planned a war. And, the attack on the World Trade Center was an excuse to go at the war. Second, a technological transformation of the military in which fighting from space would become central. Third, an increasing amount of military spending to pay for these new wars and for weaponizing space. 4, to modify the doctrine of preemptive attack so that America would be able to attack other countries even if they pose no imminent threat. These 4 elements would moreover require a 5th, an event that would make the American people ready to accept these imperialistic policies. Congratulations, America. You have an awesome government.